important points from compliance perspective. As I understand that it's afternoon and we all, Indians, we all go for lunch and for this time as well. So, okay. And today I'm speaking on safe AI from cross-compliance perspective. Uh, Cross-compliance here is India and EU. It's the perspective I am considering for this session. India with 1.4 billion people and European Union with 450 million people. So it's a one country with 1.4 billion people, and it's a union of states, countries with 450 million people. They have dedicated EU AI Act uh, prior to innovations and prior to AI developments. But we as a 1.4 billion people, we don't have dedicated particular AI Act. It seems like, okay, we are something, okay, there is a gap, but it's not. It's actually a blessing, we can say. It's because we are focusing more on innovation than regulation presently, because if we consider EU AI Act, it's one of the strictest act in the world, and if you consider your AI developments or your company to work in EU, you have to comply with EU AI Act with stricter regulations and so much of compliance. But it's actually necessary from point of view, if we develop something, it has to be very safe, especially with the AI. So considering that, this it depends what's safe AI for you and what's safe AI for European Union. So there are some criteria from European Union AI Act that we might consider that these are the parameters for safe AI. So it depends, it's solely based on risk classification. You are a company working in India, it has implications, your users are from European Union. It's still you have to comply with EU AI Act, and which makes a very difficult for companies to do cross-border compliance. Are you okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's okay. So it starts with classifying risk. If you are a company who wants to work in EU and makes a cross-border compliance, it starts with high-risk AI system, correct classification of systems, which is high-risk AI systems, limited risk, minimum risk AI system. So if you know that your system is very basic or is high risk, it depends, and you are getting categorized for which compliance and what compliance you might need to consider for your AI. Even if you do this compliance, that's okay. You categorize us under high risk AI systems such as military AI or AI system developed for military or something social profiling or something. So it still falls under this. Your personal data is being shared with this AI system. So you need to consider that high risk AI system or low risk AI system, depending on it. The AI Act is something that commissions consider very stricter regulations, and considering that all of the companies in Europe are demanding getting extension for compliance. If we consider same with India, I mean, we are open. We don't have regulation. You know, every time you use when we consider AI, we mostly use Gemini, ChatGPT, and the kind of AI models which are available. But there are many other things that we need to consider, and nobody reads their AI policies or privacy policy. It's just very common. It's very obvious that we can't read their privacy policies throughout, word by word. So that's why if the regulation makes any system or any application or any AI safe by its regulation or by compliance, it's that users don't have to bother about whether it's safe or not. It's regulated by some regulation which is very strict, which is very reliant. So it's better to rely on such application. So even if it's now, the second parameter could be risk classification. If it's high, we go with the continuous risk management. Now you have passed the system that okay, it's a high risk, it's a moderate risk, or it's a lower risk system. You still have to continue with this classification continued for the till you are using it and till the companies are deploying it. Now, if you're a company, you're not just classified as just a company or just a AI user or AI deployer. It has classification like AI deployer, AI uh, manufacturer, AI promoter. Depending on it, you are making some changes into AI systems. It another categorizes you into using your trademark or using your system, which makes it reliable that who actually is operating this and who actually deploying it. Now, as I said, that the continuous risk classification gives a track record of identifying risks, mitigating them, and not just reduce those risks and for our use so that it get comply. Now, for developing such a AI in European Union or any other, it's like it depends on a data, because all AI is based on data which is being shared by us, and data sets that's available on public domain or is a private. So if their data sets or these data sets are biased somehow, the results are going to be biased. Let's consider we have this data that works on how our platelets are going to increase or decrease, and if the European Union or the different race people or our Indian race people or any other, if it's something biased, then actually it's going to give something different. So the authentication of this data set continuously is one of the parameters that we can consider for safe AI. Another is a technical documentation, what system you are using, what design you are going to detail in it, uh, and risk management steps along with testing methods. If you cannot explain your AI system, that means you know that you cannot prove it that it is safe. Coming further is transparency to users. Now we are at the end of AI Summit. I guess we will become with some rules in India as well, that all of users or something which is created by AI should be mentioning there like it is being created by AI. So this is transparency to users, that okay, what we are looking, what we are witnessing, what results we are generated by AI, how they are developed, and how they are being, what purpose it is developed for. And human oversight, the another parameter is human oversight. You develop something AI for developing a website, you develop any application for this, and you have to continuously oversight. Every time you edit your prompt in the chat GPT, just like putting your edit option there, and you can change that, that's a human oversight. Anytime between the system, anytime between the development, if there is a human oversight, that considers, okay, it is safer, that it is not generating something different that we want. It is not, if there is something risk, we are going to mitigate in between. So that's one of the parameter, like human oversight. It's not just we are going to get this AI system completely automated. Every time in between we can interact and change according to us. That's the human oversight. That's one of the parameter. It is a safe AI. No, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Yeah, yeah. That's the last time that, no problem. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, accuracy of the AI, robustness, and cybersecurity. We might have used, and most of us heard ChatGPT, but how many of you have heard Lumo by Proton? It's a Swiss-based privacy chatbot or GP AI, general purpose AI. So sometimes we give prompt to ChatGPT or any other AI model, it gives some accurate or some results, but if we use some kind of another like Lumo or any other which are developing themselves for privacy perspective, and there is no, they sometimes give, okay, we are not working on it, like we can't give something, error comes out, that's accuracy. So why this is important? You're working your health data, you're using that health data or getting some outputs from these AI deployments or AI agents, and you got, okay, my blood pressure is just 120, but why it's showing from last day it's 180? It's generated by AI, so accuracy is more than important. You don't want to get wrong medication by when we use AI in health sector. At INDRC, we use this health data to find a probable solution for Alzheimer's and Parkinson disease. and simultaneously cyber security. So every time I visit most of these public places, they have something passwords like Delhi at 123 or something kind of, right? Everyone, but that was the cyber security for AI. Just in time something happens like a data poisoning. We have these data sets, and if they are poisoned somehow to get some results which we are not going to believe that okay, these are the data, we just know the output of the data. But considering that this poisonous of the data, we must have secured cyber security standards, which is one of the parameters that we consider for safe AI. And post-market monitoring. So you deployed the AI, and even if the post-market monitoring is very important, uh, considering the feedback from the users, monitor real-world problems and performance, and take corrective action where it is required. AI system evolve, and monitoring is ensures ongoing safety. Just like models we are receiving day by day. This is XYZ model with another version. So these are the parameters of safe AI. There could be more parameters from AI perspective, from India perspective, because Indian laws or Indian legal system is not very strict or lenient. Considering our political and personal, our constitutional value, we might have more parameters, add or subtract from these parameters. Along with it, now I come with now this is the first part, like okay, safe AI. Now it's a cross compliance. Cross compliance is just your it's like you're working in another country with another users for their according to their values, according to their standards. So for this cross compliance, it means okay, we don't have to read GDPR, we don't have to read AI Act. It's nothing like that. It means if your company, if your AI is working in any other countries for users, we have to comply with their values, we have to comply with their acts. So how can we do these things? Okay, we are develop something for Indian market, we are develop something for European market. There could be possibilities that some of the safety standards are different, but either we have to include all of these, either we have to consider only common parts, but that's not the situation. The situation is, okay, you have to comply with the EU AI Act, then you have to comply with all of their required procedures. Whether whatever I mentioned for high risk, low risk, and according to, you will get classified to it and make a compliant and technology standards like this. So every time, I mean, you're physically outside of EU or any, like even they are sitting, the European Union innovators, they are sitting in European Union, they have to comply with Indian AI Act. Maybe we might witness an AI Act in upcoming years. So that's the cross compliance, and this cross compliance perspective, if you have something common safety standards, that's the minimum that we need to take, and addition and subtraction to that, it's a collaboration between multi-states that we need to consider. In conclusion, like companies operate across India, and EU must comply with relevant regulation in India and each territory, and more importantly, they must design AI system that satisfy not just not just their territory, but it's a cross compliance. So as per our regulatory standard as well. Yeah, so if we understand the risk, use good quality data, keep humans involved, protect systems from misuse, and keep monitoring performance, we can create AI that people feel confident using, and that's our line for this AI summit as well, like welfare all, happiness for all. Yeah. I think okay. I'm done with this presentation. In presentation, is mostly like, okay, it's the same what I mentioned. I forgot to fly slides. It's cross compliance, technical meaning, which is some of the gray area, some of the considering data law. We have different data law. Now we are getting compliant with the IT Act with just 60 and with rules from the AI. We are just relying on them, but it's okay. We are innovating, and for that we have this sandbox that world can consider. Okay. I think I'm summing up. Right? Yeah.
Thank you, Lalit, for discussing about the complaints part. Now I invite Dr. Vid Dokal, so to discuss on AI safety, especially with a perspective on cross compliance, Indo and Europe.
Thank you very much, Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm very happy to be here. I'm happy to be here, actually. And I'm very thank you, Ramesh and CDEC team, for organizing such an important event. And I also thank Indian government and His Excellency Prime Minister Modi for organizing AI Summit, which is very important. And we are participating there also in our booth. So if you want to see Czech booth in Expo, you are welcome to come to Hall 6. My name is Vít Dočkal. My background is law as well, so I think it will be a session of lawyers. That's great. And let me please give you some insight of our projects and how we actually are ensuring trustworthiness of AI systems. Let me speak first about Clara. Clara is a center of excellence funded by European Union and Czech state by more than 43 million euros. And we are trying to make a benefit of emerging technologies, not only AI and ML, but also large language models and HPC and quantum computers as well, to understand things and aspects which actually we couldn't understand before because we didn't have these technologies in our hands. Obviously, when the ChatGPT was released, 2022, I guess, yeah, and first quantum computer in Europe, I'm not speaking on the IBM's one, but at least the academics ones, they were actually installed last year. So now we have these technologies in our hands, and we can try to understand very, very different aspects, very complex aspects, multimodal, nonlinear aspects in our brain within the scope of these technologies, which is great, but we should not forget the compliance side. Because if we are trying to understand the processes, to understand why neurons, for example, are not living for more than 100 years, although they are supposed to live for 100 years, and why other cells, for example, which are supposed to die, like cancer cells, are not dying, we need to understand the optimal performance of the system at the cellular level and understand more the cellular signaling pathways. Therefore, we need to use very large amount of data, which means privacy, which means compliance, at least from the perspective of lawyers, but actually in Europe, and I believe also here in India, not in all countries in the world, but we agreed in Europe and in India that technology goes hand in hand with trustworthiness of the system. January 22nd in Prague, we organized official pre-summit event, which was actually acknowledged by AI Summit, AI Impact Summit India. And you might see that also first secretary of the Indian embassy in Prague was visiting this event, because actually it's very important to discuss how to ensure the trustworthiness of the systems, even in the development, even in the research. As you know, AI Act, it's applicable for technologies which are entering the market. But if you are doing errors within the innovation or bias or something, you could never ensure the trustworthiness and AI Act compliance when you are entering the market. So we need to think about that well advance, although it's not applicable at that time, but it will be applicable, so we need to think about that right away. So actually, there are two main questions when you are dealing with AI systems in healthcare, at least in Europe. It's not only about AI Act, it's also about medical device regulation. Because AI system is a medical device, or could be understood as medical device. So the first question, if you are a developer of such a system serving the clients in EU, is whether there is the applicability of medical device regulation, MDR. Because if it is, then you need to do more paperwork. Then the question is, the second question is, if it is applicable, MDR, then how do you set your metrics to validate the trustworthiness? How do you assess the trustworthiness? What are your metrics? Bias detection, accuracy. How do you actually prove the regulator and notified body that it's explainable and it could be used. So we actually develop and discuss, and actually at that meeting, it was public bodies or public authorities there, notified body, the Czech Meteorological Institute. It's a body who's actually putting the, the approvals. So we discussed the 4-layer framework, how to define this, let's say, process even in the research and innovations period. The first is some kind of due diligence, pre-market validation. It's a kind of due diligence to risk assessment, risk classification, those things what Lalit actually was explaining. The second is that you need to track the process, the workflow, because there is a lot of aspects in the workflow. Cross-site compliance must be assured during the whole process. So you have due diligence, you have the process workflow assessment, and then you have to assure that it's actually valid across the time, because some data are longitudinal. So it means that the population changes, and it should be actually validated across the time as well. And last but not least is the human-centered validation, because who would be liable when errors occur? So would your physician say, "Oh, sorry, I did bad medication because the AI system"? No, it's always about the human. And you might not know, but in some cases we go even beyond the AI Act with respect to ethics, which is called digital humanism principle, because the statement is that actually we are failing. We are failing because the technologies sometimes, are in front of us sometimes, but we cannot fail. And the digital humanism principles was signed 5 years ago in Poisdorf in Austria, also by the Czech Republic, and it was acknowledged not only by European Commission as a driving principle, but also UN, United Nations. So it's not an act, it's not a regulation, it's an ethical principle we should consider. Big data needs big processing capacities. So I'm very happy to announce that very soon, May 1st, we will launch AI Factory project. It's 40 million investment, 40 million euros investment for 3 years to support AI services in Europe. So imagine you have a spin-off company or a startup, and you need AI service, some maybe experts from university that will help you with maybe validate your language model, and you need robust processing, robust computational power. You just call us, you go, and you get it. Of course, it must be a good success story. It's not for all, but for great ideas. But you basically receive this service for free. INDRC is responsible to be the entry point for AI services in healthcare and biotech. And Czech Technical University, which is my second affiliation, is for advanced manufacturing, industrial AI services. Moreover, INDRC, with kind help of Lalit, is actually the entry point for startup support, business development, and legal and ethical services. So, one question to you: how innovators from India could have access to these services? European Union and India signed the landmark agreement, the trade agreement, just 3 weeks ago. And we need to implement it. We need to accelerate the business, and we have tools to support it. And this is my last slide. Just yesterday, you see in our booth in Expo, Hall 6, under the auspice of Her Excellency, Madame Zhigová, Her Excellency, Ambassador of the Czech Republic to India, we signed the contract, actually, and established the Indian company to support Indian innovators to come to Europe, to support them to scale up the business through the Zlín Impact Accelerator program. Maybe you don't know Zlín, the city of Zlín. It's some 300 kilometers far from Prague, but you definitely know Batya. Batya, he established a great business some 100 years ago, and it was in Zlín. He was born there, actually. So it's the city of his family. And we think that it's a great opportunity for Indian startups, Indian innovators, to establish a company in the Czech Republic, or subsidiary company in the Czech Republic, or receive a special support from the Zlín regional government to receive accommodation for free for 1 year to support the visa process. And moreover, with venture capital fund, we are collaborating. These companies can, after due diligence, and if they win it, they can get the support up to 100,000 euros for pre-seed activities and up to 1 million euros for seed activities. So imagine you get for the program, it's open now, you apply, you are successful, we want successful stories, you enter Czech Republic, establish a company, get the funding there, get the support there, you scale up, and then after 3 years, maybe you come back to India for IPO and get rich. And that's the partnership for everyone on mutual benefits and interests. And this is the partnership, I believe, which is full of trust between Czech Republic, Europe, and Bharat. Thank you very much.
So now I welcome Dr. S.D. Sudarshan, Executive Director, CDAC Bangalore. So thank you very much, sir, for coming to the event.
Namaste and good afternoon to all of you. So today we have assembled here on a very specific topic that is directly impacting the adoption of AI across the globe for the welfare of all, happiness of all. The welfare and happiness that we look at essentially happens when we trust the system, any system. So the trust is built on few fundamental things. One of them is partnership and collaboration. So that is the reason we thought under the InPace umbrella, under which 5 different Asian countries and the European Union, all the 27 countries together. So more than 30 countries as single consortia is working towards making the digital society a reality in the right way. So this is the basic collaboration partnership agreement part. Like any system has 3 aspects. AI also is not different, the legal, the moral, the ethical. So when we look at that, we need to look at a framework of governance that is acceptable across. That is where this joint framework of people working together and knowing each other through mutual engagement, which will fundamentally reshape humanity as a society. So whether it is the Horizon call that is going to come up in the next month, or the deal, the Indo-EU trade deal we signed very recently. So all of them are looking at making a digital society a reality. But to make it a reality, it cannot happen without AI support. Because we would like humans to engage in activities at a higher level than routine jobs, or as they call blue-collar kind of jobs, to be done by the AI. So humans can live for a higher purpose in life. So it is not about losing jobs, but we create a framework of governance and compliance for a trusted society. And when we do really that, what happens is we live our life as humans. The AI framework fundamentally is throwing a challenge to the traditional software stack that we have been used to, where there is a set of known requirements and you test against the requirements and we say it is pass, fail, or there are some acceptable limitations, we roll it out. But with the AI, particularly the Gen AI of the like, the system is continuously learning and adapting. So the traditional requirements versus testing is not going to work because the functionality is continuously evolving and changing. So suddenly we are looking at a framework which requires compliance based on some prescriptive analytics rather than standard compliance of do's and don'ts, SAT, acceptance testing, and so on. This also brings us together to a new era of transdisciplinary work. Suddenly, engineering, science, and arts are no different. They need to talk to each other. We need a model that is based on sound mathematics. We need a user interface that is based on communication that is essentially humanities and art subject. But the implementation is core technical, which is engineering. And in the end, the wellness and welfare is related to healthcare, the ergonomics, the strain and stress on the eyes when we look at the blue screen, and the reinforcement kind of learning, which can actually create a larger bias, which is one of the challenges in AI, which means we are looking at even psychology and that kind of subjects. So suddenly, AI is integrating all the disciplines under one umbrella, which is also very good because when we combine all this, suddenly we see there is a need for natural intelligence to be in action, to make the artificial intelligence a reality that is legally and morally acceptable. So the purpose of today's gathering, thanks to WIT, the idea was conceptualized when we met in September in Singapore for the InPace annual event. Thanks to Aarti and Lalit. So we immediately thought it is very important to present to the larger audience so that such a framework, governance framework can be evolved. This requires support of people from all walks of life and all sections of the scientific or the STEM and whatever communities you call it, arts, society, social, all of them. So it's a kind of a, I will not say 360 degree because it is a 2D affair. AI is about tensor, which is multidimensional. So we are going beyond 2D. So evolving a framework of governance, which will ensure the AI, while it is adaptive, it functions within the human societal guardrails, which will make anyone and everyone accept the decisions of AI because it is based on sound principles and the actions are transparent. In the end, we live happily ever after through that governance. And we do collaborate beyond this country and continent level engagements through standards bodies as well. So we have engagements with academic universities, standardization bodies like IEEE, IETF, IRTF, ISO, all of them. But the standardization happens only when the dialogues are done and we reach a consensus. Through InPace, we have been organizing several workshops across the globe to discuss such a digital societal framework and the policy implications. And it is great that not only it is multi-country, but it is also multi-dimensional. So you can see the industry here, you see the federal agencies here, you have seen the academia. So all of them are under one roof. We are sitting across the table to decide. So I don't mean to take larger time than this. And glad I could make it before the session ended from Bharat Mandapam to here. And I think I have to shuttle back again, thanks to the schedule being like that. But thank you for joining us, and special thanks for flying in for this event with a short notice, because anybody planning an international trip in less than 4 months through approval processes, we know how it is. Thanks, Vit, thanks, Aarti and Lalit, and Ramesh for coordinating. And all of you are welcome to join hands, both for the in-pace work, the horizon call, and just the Czech Republic, what the open invitation given by WIT. And within the country, CDAC is looking for collaboration under the India AI umbrella, under the National Supercomputing Mission, under the India Semiconductor Mission. All of them, we are National Quantum Mission and so on. All of them are very strongly involved in partnership of private, public and others. So welcome to reach out to us. And though not present, we also have IIT Guwahati as one of the key partners from the Indian side. And you will hear them on the 20th. We have another session, evening 4:30 Bharat Mandapam. So there we will also hear from the IIT Guwahati side and a few more colleagues who will join, because we had to make sure everybody gets a chance within the available slots. So do think over. We have 2 more days. 20th we can actually chart out the next course of action once you make up your mind. We are looking for collaboration. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hand it back to Ramesh.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful insights from your vast experience in AI and digital governance. Now I call upon Aarti Sadananda ma'am, so for providing us insights about AI and data governance in India, also focusing on DPDP Act and how it can comply with European acts like GDPR. So please take over, ma'am.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Standing between you and lunch and law, I'll try to keep this brief and really would appreciate a very participative audience, and happy to take questions, in the middle of my talk or anytime a thought crosses your mind. So feel free to, just raise your hand while I'm talking. And, my previous speakers have really laid out a lot around healthcare and, international cooperation that India has. CDAC has done a great job of telling you, what they've been doing. And so you can see there's a real passion to do stuff, right, across countries. And you see this actually across the globe. We've had conferences organized, prior to this around AI, obviously at the Bletchley Park, which started in 23. Then you had the Seoul conference, you had the Paris conference, and now, India's trying to organize a global conference at our level. So I think from navigating regulatory policies, challenges, safeties, and governance, the first question is, why do we need to regulate it at all, right? And I think it's a very important question to understand, because several countries have taken several approaches to it. And the most prominent ones, of course, is, US has a very light touch sort of independent sectoral regulation. And they're going full scale to say, let's just, let innovation and market forces drive how our AI tools are developed and how our consumers work to that. And what they famously call the AI race, right? I don't know what the finish line is, but there is a race. And China, no one really clearly knows what's happening there. Of course, we know DeepSeek came out of there a couple of months ago, so we see there's a lot of model architecture and advances that's happening there. And then you have the BRICS nations and India leading a very separate and a charter for their own people because of the diversity of languages, because our needs are so diverse, and our access to some of the basic technology that really propels AI is also very different. And then you have other countries, so as a part of AZB and Partners, which is a national law firm, I also head our Taiwan desk. So which means that I have some exposure to what's going on the east side as well. So South Korea, Taiwan, and that region, right, Japan. So they are planning, their own approach to how they will regulate and govern safety and of AI models as well as tools, right? And then you have the European Union, who's the leader of the pack. And I call it leader of the pack because they were one of the first, sets of people to really look at it from a citizen's point of view and look at it as saying, there are fundamental rights for our citizens, and then there's technology that's developing at an accelerated pace. So what does this technology really mean? And remember, most of this technology is right now coming out of the US, right? And everyone else is, keeping pace or trying to keep pace. Europe has, a couple of lead players, including Mistral. India is still, looking to see who's our player, but MeitY has done a great job of seeing, how they can invest through compute and non-compute resources into selected startups and see how that's going to really take off. So you can see all these disparate attempts that's all converging at these summits for everyone to get together and see if we can answer some of these big questions. And geopolitics is not completely divorced from what we're doing. So a large part of the conversation is geopolitics and how different countries, for want of a better word, weaponize regulation to make sure that they're staying ahead. Not staying ahead of any particular race that's determined by a single country, but how they can keep pace for their own people so they're not left behind in whatever is happening, right, in respect to access to these kind of public goods. AI is literally a public good now. And India's had great success with the India stack and having built the payment architecture through which 1.4 billion people can access financial inclusion, right? Of course, we rely on PhonePe, GPay, Amazon Pay, all of these various platforms. But they build it on the roadway or the railway that India built for it. And they're trying to see if we can do that in AI by saying, what's our foundational AI model? So that's a little bit of history, I think we should, or rather background we should keep in mind into why our policy making is going to be quite different and why our regulations are different and what is the challenge of our policymakers, right? And so I will, touch upon a few aspects, and during this time, feel free to ask me a spate of regulations that have come out that may have caught your attention. But why is it important, right? So the risks from AI models is largely into three categories. And that's why we're talking about safety. So when you talk about safety, safety from what? Like, what are we guarding ourselves from? So it's important to understand what that risk is. And what that risk is so bifurcated or trifurcated into AI models that essentially malfunction, all right? Or just misuse, and we know misuse. We see it all the time, and we see also systemic risks in how these models are being developed. So this is the risk we're talking about, right? Malfunction, misuse, and then systemic risk, and we're trying to cover all of that. What do I mean by malfunction? Okay, need my picture before I make my point, so. Okay, sure. So in any case, so we're talking about misuse, malfunction, and systemic risks. So, the more and more AI tools have become accessible to the general public, the lower the barriers have become to really use it, deploy it. We've had, issues of deep fakes, non-consensual imagery of people that's getting floated everywhere. And this obviously has the effect or impact of influencing people and behaviors of people. It can be influence in elections, it can be influence in health data, it can be influence in perception of how you look at data, or even, how you form opinions. So some of the surveys of ChatGPT said that the largest use for how they use ChatGPT, and India is like 70 million users for any of these platforms, is largely from, asking it advice, asking ChatGPT or any of these models for advice. It was for writing and asking it for suggestions for ways to do things. So we're not really using it for any kind of fundamental, as yet proven productivity gains, at least in India, for enterprise AI deployment. And so what are we really using it for, and what is the risk associated with that? So what is the challenge for a policymaker in India? So we know what the problem is. We know it probably needs fixing, or it does need fixing. So how do you fix it, right? What is the challenge of the policymaker? So any guesses? What's the challenge in making the law? We all say, let's make laws for, let's stop doing this, let's stop the deep fakes, let's stop influencing people's behavior so much. Let's stop children access. That's a big question now as well. So what is the challenge, you think, of a policymaker when you try to make a law for any of these things? Any wild guesses? Consensus? Okay, so object definition. What are you trying to really tackle? Yeah?
Also,
Can you just speak up?
law should fit to all. Like you said, we have children, we have education, we have different sectors. So you have to make something which is generalized for everyone.
Okay, yeah. Object, fit for all purpose.
Also, ma'am, I think while making laws, the policymakers always think that we have to keep up with the innovation and growth. At the same time, we have to think about individual and society at large.
Yeah, yeah. So you want to fast track development, but at the same time you want to balance priorities for your people as well.
Yes, that is
It can kill innovation.
Yeah? Innovation.
Yeah, it can kill it.
Okay. So are you saying like no regulation at all because you don't want to kill
Not
innovation?
really, but the challenge is that how to make it so that we don't kill innovation.
Okay. What is like the perfect recipe? So it's not overcooked or undercooked. Okay.
And the practicality of implementation, it looks great in theory,
Yeah.
you can come up with
Yeah,
laws,
absolutely.
but how do
Great
you
point.
implement it?
Yeah.
But what I feel like it has to be very simple, because India, by its magnitude of people using data today, consuming data today, you need to keep it simple so that they are
There's
well
clarity
understood.
and understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a great policymakers here. We all, we collectively came up with so many reasons, right? And so, like in larger forums and countries that are thinking about it, this is true. All of these are being taken into consideration. But one of the most critical aspects of why we are not really able to make, really robust laws, and there's no, like a litmus test for countries to say, hey, this is how you fix it. And the reason why you can't do that is because we have underreporting. Okay, so where is the data to say, yeah, okay, children, right? The lady back there said that. You said it has to be practical. And then, so where is the data to say these many deepfakes were generated, and or, these many children were affected, or this particular use case is prohibited, and then how many people, or who is the content creator for all of this? Are you able to bring down to who the... So the first problem is when you make a law is the data, right? We have completely underreported and inaccessible systemic data. That's number one. Second is what is the sort of detection tool? Okay, so do we? Somebody said, right, like the innovation is going so fast, it's all fast-paced, but you still want to keep balance. So when you do that, how do you figure out, what are the tools as the technology keeps advancing? Law always lags a little bit behind because you're trying to catch up to what's happening. So what's the kind of tools I use to detect that something has happened, right? So who's investing in those tools? The AI safety tools, so that's the topic. So what's what's the safety prerogative, and who's developing these tools, who's funding it, right? Because this takes time, money, and objective. So being very clear on that. The gentleman in the first said, consensus, objective, what are we actually doing? So that is the second one on AI tools. And then the third one is you want to keep pace. Somebody said that already also. You want to keep pace with what's going on and not left behind. And then if all of this can be deployed, can you then really say that we have the basis to build India view or an India policy on saying how it should be regulated, right? And what's really the next challenge is that, as these models scale, the persuasiveness of these models also accelerate very highly. And what I mean by that is that, and I'm just taking an example, right, like a Grok or a Claude, from its first version to its fifth version, it's trained on more and more compute. It's trained on, obviously, the transformer architecture or any of the newer models. And what it happens is that with that increased training and the compute power and the horsepower that's gone behind it, it's become so much more capable of persuading its user to tell you what it's saying is the holy truth. So there are so few people who question what's being said, right? So when that's going on, even when you have a policy that says, this is not transparent, users be like, that's fine, let me still use the model, right? So can you actually stop user behavior? Or are we just mouthing, these words of transparency or safety or fairness? So what really goes behind, the 7 sutras? The Indian government came out with that as a light touch voluntary governance guideline. So with that, what goes behind it? How do you actually, determine those things? And you've all heard about AI agents. So how do you discriminate liability between the AI agents? And in multi-agent model architecture, can one agent just move the blame to another agent? And how do you actually affix liability over here? So these are questions that's already, so the questions are getting formed faster than the answers, right? So that's really where we are over there. And when the AI system fails, right, and what I mean by failure, the most simple case of failure is hallucination. But when you have other cases of failure, like basic reasoning, right, you could have that. You could have failure in the kind of tools you use, because a lot of the third-party tools are being used on already created models. So everybody ran over time. So how do you do that, right, with that? So how do you affix liability? So the policy needs to also take that into consideration. And so, I would, in summation, because we're running out of time a bit, is to really think what is India's policy for safety and governance. We had a policy when we became a software giant, right? We made a policy saying we will not patent softwares. And so somewhere that led to multiplication of companies, their models of how software will get exported to the rest of the world, models of creating value over here. So we had a policy. For pharma, we had a policy. For manufacturing, we had a policy. For industries, we had a policy. So what is India's AI policy? Right? What is the basis for that? What's the safety and governance aspect of that? So we'll just have to remember that we have information asymmetry between the models and what users are really coming up with. That's number one. Second is we've spoken about this need to be fast with everything. So it's a market, possibly a market risk or a market failure, where you're trying to keep pace, but the risks don't have enough time to get vetted out. And so you have to account for that. Third is institutional design, right? Any institution. What's really the design formula there? What's what I call the evidence dilemma? And in February, the International AI Safety Report was published, and it's a superb document if you've not read it before. It's a little heavy at about 200 pages, but it's one of the best documents that's been put out by the international community. It's not prescriptive in what companies or countries should do, but it's very enlightening on what ought to be considered when you make these. And last is, of course, coordination challenges. We have so many ministries looking at so many things. So interministerial cooperation and also at a country-wide cooperation, because it's not just geographical barriers now, it's technology barriers. So how do you go through all of that? And lastly, you know, what the report also calls as a defense in depth strategy. How do we defend ourselves against all of this onslaught of technology? There's no like a single answer to it, but it really means that you bring together a combination of technological, organizational, societal, you know, institutions coming together, and that's really what the summit is about. You bring a whole range of measures, and AI models in the broader ecosystem will obviously evolve and keep evolving, like everyone has said, but policymakers will step up on how governance and safety need to work. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So thank you so much, Ati ma'am. So it's very insightful, and a lot of areas regarding policy and governance are covered. So since time is very short, we can take quick 1 or 2 questions very fast.
Hi there, I'm Mayank. I lead digital investigations and data governance at JS Held. Sorry? At JS Held. It's a consultancy firm out of the US. So I kind of wrote down this question. Firstly, thank you so much for the talk. It was very insightful. This question I had on the liability gap between the frameworks in the EU and India. Obviously, the EU AI Act places quite heavy conformity obligations on the provider of the models. But under India's DPDPA, the full liability pretty much sits with the data fiduciary. And I'm just thinking of the nightmare scenario where you have an Indian bank that deploys a compliant, say, European high-risk model, and it starts hallucinating and leaks personally identifiable information. The provider says, we met EU standards, and the Indian regulator says, well, no, you failed DPDPA due diligence. Now, how can an Indian director sign a compliance certificate when they technically can't audit the black box that they're renting in this scenario?
Sorry, which is the black box?
That would be the AI model that they've taken from, say, the EU, something that's EU compliant LLM model from, you know, from let's say from Czech Republic for that matter. And I guess the other point is, are you seeing contracts that successfully force forensic access onto the providers? Because, or are Indian boards basically just simply inheriting this black box liability at the moment?
Okay.
Due to time shortage, ma'am, I would request to close it actually. The session is planned 12:30. Team is waiting outside. So we can close one question and remaining we can complete in entrance area. It will be available, ma'am.
Am I audible? Okay. So I'm not sure it's an Indian board problem. I think it's a board everywhere problem, especially the US. And I think governance is, you know, like I said, it's each company's approach to it. And from an India board perspective, I think the boards have gotten really smart about how they do this. They definitely don't take blanket acceptances on EU compliance. It has to comply with DPDPA if the company is in India. The only exception is if you're not processing, you know, Indian people's data, like the data principal is not Indian, then it doesn't matter. Right? But if the data principal is Indian, of course it matters. And it does not matter what system or tool from where you're using. So to that extent, I don't personally buy the black box principle, and I think you've got to go with the strict liability standard over there. Yeah?
Thank you, ma'am. I think, yeah, please. Yes, please.
I know we're not seeing contracts on that.
Hello. So as for banks, banks are regulated by RBI, which has like a service legal agreements, and it's like a mandatory compliance for it. It just recently they come up with some updated guidelines by RBI. It's like yeah. So I think you can look for it so to get it compliant. Yes.
Yeah, so in the interest of times, I thank all the participants for being here physically, and we have a lot of thousands of online participants you are watching on online YouTube Live. This is just a beginning. So with this workshop, we would look forward all of you to participate in developing a cross-compliance framework across the countries. So we have the details of all the participants. We will circulate our action plan. So the call for action will be circulated to all of you, and all are you welcome to participate in this noble cause. And let us make the AI global. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you all for joining the session. Your exit is in back side of right hand side. Momentum use.